weekend at the Centennial Concert Hall, Winnipeg audiences will be treated to a world premiere. Into Oblivion is the latest creation of WSO Composer-in-Residence Harry Stafylakis. Joining the WSO in the unveiling is the French-Canadian bass-baritone Philip Sly. And Harry has joined me in the studio this morning. Hello.
Hi, Simon. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Welcome back to Classic 107. Welcome back to Winnipeg after what looked like a rather busy summer as a globe-trotting, in-demand composer and curator, Harry.
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky about that, but it's nice to be back in Winnipeg. I've missed it. I haven't been here since March.
Wild.
Yeah.
It's been that long, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, well, and I'm particularly happy to have you back in town for a world premiere. Before we get chatting about the work, I'm curious, because it's not every day I get to ask a composer this. How are you feeling heading into a world premiere? Like, what's going through your head? It's the day of.
It is tonight. You're right. You just got me nervous.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Very excited. It depends largely on where we are and who's performing and all that. I'm especially excited for this one because, first of all, everything has come together beautifully. The rehearsals have been amazing. Philip is an amazing singer. The WSO's killing it, and it's. Particularly, there's a good synergy between myself, Philip, and Daniel, who was conducting. I'm really just thrilled to hear it again, to hear the performance, and to be there with the audience, to share in that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds thrilling. I was listening to some of the teasers that have been coming out, right. And we'll talk about those in just a little bit. But yeah, like I was saying, it's not every day that a composer comes in ahead of a work and that we get to chat about just that feeling, that nervous excitement, that energy. I don't know if there's like some sort of fancy pre-routine.
I definitely get more nervous once the house lights come off.
Yeah.
That's when I start feeling what's going to happen?
It's going to happen one way or the other.
I don't have to perform. That's the beauty of it. I'm not responsible in a good way or a bad way for what happens on stage. So I get to just be an audience member until the piece is done.
Yeah, and enjoy the work.
Yeah.
So this particular work is a song cycle for baritone and orchestra called Into Oblivion, as I mentioned. A text by the English writer and poet D.H. Lawrence. What about this text caught your attention? Was it the text? Was it the person D.H. Lawrence? What was it?
Well, it wasn't. Actually, I was surprised. I had collaborated with Philip Sly on the Keats cycle.
Yeah,
so
back in like
it was
2007, right?
I started writing the piece in 2007, and we premiered in 2010 with orchestra. And I had been quite a fan of romantic British poetry at the time, and I'd gone deep into the John Keats rabbit hole. And then as I came out of it and was getting into other vocal projects and possibilities for vocal projects, I'm very picky about the text that I set. So it takes a lot of research, a lot of reading for me to find the things that sing to me, that kind of compose themselves in my head. And I was reading through collections of poetry and came across some D.H. Lawrence, and I was kind of shocked because his poetry is not what I expected given the novels that we read in high school and in the literature classes in college. This particular poem, The Ship of Death, is this epic 10-part poem that's very dark and introspective. It goes into some very difficult subject matter, and there's a lot of motivic repetition. You hear something about into oblivion. This is oblivion, constantly coming in like this mantra. And that was, for a composer, that's an ideal kind of setup where you have these kind of musical taglines that could keep coming through the piece. The depth of the poetry, of the philosophy, of the concept of death and coming to terms with it and finding a way as a human being. He had been dying, it seemed, for the last 10 years of his life. He had been suffering from various illnesses, and so he had a good 10 years of his life where he was focused a lot on that aspect of life.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote so much on politics, on spirituality, on philosophy, and this whole idea of reflecting on humanity as a whole and dehumanity at times. And I mean, so it is interesting the idea of death and how he approaches it and how he had, as you mentioned, a while to get there. So I'm not wrong to assume that the text came first and then it was the music.
So that's right. I found the text, maybe in 2012 or something, and I just collected it in my collection of things that one day might be helpful. And then, in 2015, I just got a call from Philip. I hadn't spoken to him in a little while. And he said, we need a new project. Let's do it. So we sat together and started going through a bunch of texts that I recommended to him. And we both kind of looked at that one and we were like, yeah, that's the one. That's perfect. We really see eye to eye on a lot of things artistically, and started working on it. And it took a good 4 years to get us to this point. And there we are.
So I don't really know this text. I kind of read through it before you came in, and I don't want to judge a book by its cover, but I'm going to do a little bit of assuming here. Based on the title, based on what you just said, and based on your predilection for metal and your past collaboration with Animals as Leaders, I imagine the work that you've created is very thin and blithe and light. And
it's totally sparse.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I figured.
It's epic. It's a huge piece. For one thing, it's not just a song. It's a symphonic song cycle. It's basically a symphony in all but name. It's about 40-minute work, and it is a 10-part poem, so there's 10 individual songs, but they're grouped together into 3 big parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, essentially like movements of a symphony. And it's true to my style and my appreciation for heavy musical contrasts. I like things to be very small and lyrical and intimate, and then suddenly very big and metal and romantic and lush. And we have a huge orchestra that we have behind Phil. He has a huge voice, so it could support that amount of sound coming from behind him. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty big piece.
Oh, I am very excited for you and for what audiences are going to see. I was kind of thinking about this, and I was looking at the WSO teasers that they were releasing, and Philip Sly talked about the exact same aspects of the music, this kind of post-romantic lushness, and he said in summation that this music is a nod to where music was, and then with your music, also a nod to where classical music is going. Thought that was a really beautiful line.
A beautiful thing, and hopefully I can do justice to that idea.
So Philip Sly, we have to talk about him. I first heard him in 2013. I was singing with the University Singers at the time. He was the baritone soloist in Handel's Messiah with the WSO, and all of us just kind of looked at each other at the dress rehearsal and were like, well, what just happened? His voice is marvelous. It is rich. It is full. And this was back in 2013.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what has changed since. But like you said, you were collaborating with him before he was quote unquote big, before the grand prize win at the Montreal International Music Competition in 2012. What can you tell us about Philip?
As a musician,
just as a human being,
as
you first came to work together, you were both in Montreal at the time.
Yeah, we were at McGill together. I first encountered him. He reminded me of this. I'd kind of forgotten that was our first encounter, but it was with him singing Dichterliebe,
nice.
Which is one of my favorite vocal works of the classical repertoire, and very similar kind of, like, it was shivers throughout the thing. Like, what is happening right now? What is this incredible instrument in this person's body? And that was 2008 or 2009, something like that. And when I brought to him the Keats cycle for us to do that with orchestra, I was again blown away that my kind of youthful over-orchestration of that piece didn't seem to hamper him at all, because he just has this powerful, amazing voice. It has only matured further. Like, one thing that I loved about his voice, for instance, is it's very musical. It's almost like a bass trombone in terms of the lyricism and flowingness of it. But also he has a super wide range, which was really useful because I'm over-ambitious with my vocal ranges. So his high and low range are all really powerful, and he seems to have no trouble handling these very sudden jumps that I give him. He's a very thoughtful musician. And philosophical. Like, the first draft of the piece that I sent him in 2016, he absolutely loved it, but there was a bit right at the end, like the actual ending of this 40-minute epic song cycle. It's like, philosophically, according to the poetry and how I interpret it, this is wrong. And it was a very confident statement, and I was kind of taken aback, but okay, tell me what you think. And I ended up rewriting the entire ending, and the piece is much better served for it based on, his thoughtful approach into it. He's not just interpreting something that I put on the page. He is in it as much as I am.
Yeah, a true collaboration.
A true collaboration, absolutely.
And Winnipeg audiences are going to see that this weekend. Harry, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure, Simon. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure having you here. And you can be at a world premiere tonight, the Centennial Concert Hall, 7:30 p.m. There's another performance tomorrow, same time, same place, Into Oblivion by WSO Composer-in-Residence Harry Stafylakis, with French-Canadian bass-baritone Philip Sly, really one of the Canadian singers right now, performing with the WSO. Also on the program, Rachmaninoff's Symphonic Dances. For information, visit wso.ca as we hear the voice of Philip Sly performing Erlkönig.